kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 12 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone, OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. G'day, Dad.
How you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Keeping
Good
well.
week?
Yeah, good week. And enjoying this process of reliving all of this time. How's it feel for you to sort of to read the book and then
It's
chat
good.
away?
It's good to read what I've written.
Yeah.
How are my favourite children?
My kids are 16, nearly 16 and 13. And they are great. That's
Fabulous.
always the
Fabulous.
big question you ask every time. So we don't get to them for a little while in the book, but
Well, give them a big kiss for me, won't you?
I will. Maybe when we get to the part of the book where they appear, maybe I'll get one of them or the other of
All
them
right.
to come and join us
All
in the
right.
podcast.
Cool.
So the last episode, we spent some time talking about the parachute course, and sort of really, I guess you really felt like you were playing with the big boys now that you'd gone through all of that kind of stuff.
Big
So
time.
so describe the feeling when you woke up the next day after the parachute course, you're getting ready to go back to Sydney. You must have felt on top of the world.
We were strutting around with our parachute wings on our battle dresses,
Yeah.
which is a winter outfit.
Yeah.
Walking around with snowy. Look at that. Look at me. Look at me. And we wore them all the way to Sydney, and we wore them everywhere in Sydney, even
Yeah.
to the SCG.
So this next chapter, we're going to get a sense of all you guys getting on the drink and, and
Yeah.
having a bit of fun before you headed back to the regiment. So this must be fond memories of this time of
Oh, mate,
that idea of mateship,
it
and
is. Camaraderie.
you'd gone through a lot of stuff with these blokes. So this really forges that lifelong
Yeah,
connection.
no, it certainly does. It sets you up for life. I ring a couple of these blokes every day,
Hmm.
and others that I serve with later on who are seriously close mates. A lot of them are dead. A lot of them have died, and
Hmm.
it's a shame, but that's what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the reason for writing this book is that you're recording these memories, things that you
Yeah.
and memorializing these blokes who have been such an impact.
Yeah,
So,
before I put the queue in the wreck. So,
well, as far as we're concerned, that's a while away yet, right?
a couple of months anyway.
Well, let's get to the end of the book first. We've got to read this one and then read the next book. So we got to you're on orders
We'll do
to hang around for a bit more.
that. Promise to hang around for a couple of years.
Good. Okay, so this next chapter is called On the Rantan, and we're going to be talking about all of that fun times you had. As I say, today we'll be reading chapter 9 of Two Ranks on the Road: 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Services by Michael J. Malone, OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. This chapter, entitled On the Rantan, covers pages 73 to 78 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we'll pause in the least disruptive way possible, and I will read that footnote. And now, without further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 9 on the Rantan, 1967. The Odd Gargle. We travelled to Sydney in comfort in one of the silver electric trains. I used to travel to school and back in similar trains to Katoomba. Arriving at Central Station, we were left to our own devices and were down to a group of 6 when we booked into Johnny's Doss House. up in the Rocks area. It was built back in the start of the 20th century as a refuge for sailors off foreign ships. The big old building with bedrooms on 3 floors each, containing up to 10 triple bunks. It wasn't flash, but it was cheap, with secure lockers for our clobber. We headed out on the Rantan dressed as we arrived in battle dress. With can't believe that went it with our new wings prominent as we wandered down George Street, looking for a pub. Wasn't long before we found a good Regis pub where we sank a few ice cold schooners. A couple of blokes were from other states. Rod Wallace was from Queensland, as was G.D. Smith. Ken Bowen was from Victoria, and Joe Rice was from Tassie. It was down to me, an old Sydney type, to show the boys around, and of course they all wanted to go up the cross. Being on a Friday, Sydney was pumping, and we jumped a tram down to William Street. We decided we'd walk up to the cross and made a pact to stick together. I thought, is this where I become sullied? I know a few of the boys were keen to get amongst the ladies of the night. Me, not so much. I still had my little redhead waiting for me, and I was very keen to save myself for her. Walking up the wide expanse of William Street past the Darlinghurst Courthouse, of which we were fully intended not to see the insides. We encountered the early birds, the girls who were out to hire young soldiers, to lure young soldiers before they got to the cesspool of the cross proper. We pulled into a pub and sank a couple of schooners before we headed off again. I didn't want to get the round bottom shoes on too early. So that was it for me. We got to the Alamein fountain where a noisy protest was underway. The lady was yelling, 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't want your fucking war. It probably hadn't dawned on them that the US servicemen there on R&R were providing 70% of their daily income. Talk about biting the hand that feeds. A lot of anti-war types, mostly young men of call-up age, who really didn't want to end up in the army, were there. I remember the ladies hanging out of all the windows calling to prospects to come on up, while others were chanting 1, 2, 3, 4 refrain. Stopping for an O group, we decided to wait for the blokes who wanted to put a leg over, Joe Rice being the keenest. Wasn't long before, he wasn't long, I can tell you. He found a delightful young chick of questionable age, agreed on a price, and away they went. Joe wore a big grin for the rest of the night. The rest of us were quite happy to wander and see the sights and do the best we could to avoid aggressive matlows, who seemed to be everywhere. The last thing we wanted was a street slouch. We were tempted to visit Les Girls, which was a drag show. I'd never heard of drag till now. Tempted, but no thanks. The cross was getting pretty rowdy by about 10 p.m., so we decided to beat a retreat. Back down to William Street to find a couple of cabs to get us back to Johnny's. Once back there, and after an argument with the cab driver, we headed for our dorm. The bloke on the front desk checked us in, and away we went. We were booked in for the weekend, and our gear was securely stowed. Next morning, at 8 a.m., up and at 'em at 8 a.m. After a tub, we dressed and scarpered down looking for breakfast. A good feed of bacon and eggs were found in a Greek cafe in George Street. It was spring by this time and still pretty brisk, and the battle dress came in very handy. Our plan was to walk over to the Sydney Cricket Ground to see a demonstration game of Aussie rules football, stopping on the way at the Captain Cook Hotel in Moore Park for a countery. Dad and I used to stop here on our way to the SCG to watch his beloved St George Dragons flog everyone.
Footnote: 11 grand final victories in a row, 1956 and 1966. They changed the rules, adding a tackle limit not long after that.
Yeah. Just thinking about Fardy then. Australian rules was a game I'd never seen played. Neither had Rod or GD, both Queenslanders, but the boys from Victoria, Tassie and WA were very keen to introduce us to this remarkable game. The two teams were the top league teams from Geelong and St Kilda. Cowboy Neil was one of the St Kilda stars. We were told by Kenny Bowen and Alzo, who were our main commentators, explaining this cross-country basketball game being played on cricket and rugby league's hallowed ground. I couldn't get my head around the no offside and no knock-on rules. Talk about anarchy, but it was a fast game, I can tell you. I couldn't understand how you could get a point for missing. We were really give, we really gave it to the Strulies, but it was all in good fun and they handled it well. I must admit, being an old rugby tragic, I was very impressed with the game. The athleticism, big men in impossibly short shorts and sleeveless jumpers, and the bigger men in the ruck. They would make good rugby second row forwards. We had a good posse behind the goalposts and marvelled at the little man in the white dust jacket and bowler hat, whose job was to signal whether it was a goal or a point. Um, he would then drag out a flag for two flags for a goal and signal to the other goal umpire by waving the flag. Extraordinary stuff. So that was my first experience of Australian rules football, which these days is very popular all over Australia. And yes, I'll admit I'm a Dockers fan now and for my sins. After the game, we again dropped into the Captain Cook for the odd gargle. I was going home to my mum's house, so when we got to Central, I left the boys and would catch up with them on Monday for the long haul back to Perth. I bought a return ticket and caught one of the red westbound trains for the 1 hour plus ride back to St Mary's. It was very nostalgic riding through the outer suburbs around Parramatta.
Footnote. Most of the savannah-like countryside of that day has been subsumed by housing developments, and now Sydney extends all the way to the Blue Mountains.
I caught a cab at St Mary's station for the 10-minute ride to Thompson Avenue. Mum and Dad were very pleased to see me, which was great. It was good to get out of my battle dress and relax. I think they were proud of me with my flash para wings. They knew very little about SAS and Western Australia and what I'd got myself into. And were reluctant to ask me too much about what I'd been up to. There was very little I could tell them beyond what we did on the Carter and the Paracourse, as they had the sum total of my training to date. It was good to sit at Mum's kitchen table again for dinner and drink a cold beer with the old man. On his day, he was an extremely funny man. Mum, on the other hand, was very quiet and reflective. She knew the perils I had opened up for myself, given her family's efforts in both World Wars. Dad was wounded twice in World War II. Her cousin Cocky McGann served in the second AIF. Dad's brother Terry Malone, heading to Vietnam with the AATTV. Dad's other brother Jim, who'd served with Dad in the 2nd 13th Battalion, and then with the Beekoff in Japan. Terry's son Peter was in Armoured Corps at that time and was due to go to Vietnam any month now. Mum was a woman of peace and didn't want anything to do with this military stuff. But given that, she was still very supportive of my choice to do the best I could in the army. Dad, being an old Labor man, was not too happy for me to be going off to fight in Bob Menzies' war. I told him that we would be training for 18 months before deployment, but by that time we would have our shit in one sock. As for Menzies' war, none of us believed it was any one person's war. It was a war started by the communists, and we were supporting the Americans to try and drive them back, or at least halt them in South Vietnam. I believed in the domino theory then, as I still do, and my father believed in fighting the Japanese in the islands for the same reason. Mum served up a lovely dinner, Dad had plenty of coldies in the fridge, and after dinner we settled down in the lounge to watch TV. Before long, I was sound asleep. About 10 p.m., I woke up and staggered off to bed. They were already asleep as I stripped off and crawled into my old bed. I slept very soundly and woke up around 7 a.m. with Dad calling from the kitchen. You coming to Mass with me? He called. No, mate, sorry. I expected to get a mouthful like last time when I was around 17. A quick shower and out to the kitchen. Mum had cooked a man-sized feed of bacon and eggs, which I got stuck into. What are you planning to do today? She asked. I'm going to visit my civilian scaly mates if I can find any. I said, before I got my little car out of the garage, I slipped next door to say good day to Jim and Judy McNaught. Jim was a RAF sergeant out at Richmond Air Base. Bit of a buffhead, but friendly enough. Well, Judy was really nice and a good friend of Mum's. This street was full of war service homes, all made of fibre, of course. The modern building code. Back in those days, asbestos was treated as a miracle product because it resisted fire. Little did we all know how dangerous it was to humans. I drove up to the end of the street to see my friends, the Carmichaels, Ken, Lois, Chrissy, and Susie.
Footnote. I think they had a little brother too, but I can't be sure.
I was particularly keen on Chrissy, but was never game to say anything to her. They were all very pleased to see me, and over a cup of coffee, I told them what adventures I'd been up to so far. After an hour, I drove down to St Mary's Town, trying to find some of my old mates, nary a one, but I had no idea where they may have gone. I then drove up to Penrith to see my girlfriend, Adrian Gordon, with the flaming red hair. Her family was also pleased to see me. Adrian and I were somewhat of an item, although untouched by me. I'm not sure I knew where this was going, but I was heading west in a day or so. Distance and time would be the arbiter. Besides, they were wall-to-wall beautiful women in WA, and I was sure I'd succumb to someone's wiles. Back home on a Sunday night with the bellette tucked in up in Dad's garage, we sat down for a nice roast dinner. Mum was never the cook of her mother's standard, but it was a serious roast, and Dad was very happy. Mum was a bit teary, and Dad was very quiet. Um, he'd sold his milk run by this stage and was working down at Clyde Engineering, crane chasing, early to bed, as I had to be up at Sparrows to catch the 7 a.m. train to Central. She'd pressed my uniform, washed and ironed my shirt and my underwear, bit of a polish on my boots and gaiters, and I was ready to go. Grabbed my kit bag, a teary farewell from them, from Mum, and Dad dropped me off. Did I detect a bit of moisture around his eyes? Nah, couldn't be. Got a serious hug though. His farewell words: "Be careful, old son." Caught the red train, which stopped everywhere and alighted at Central. The RV was the eastern corner of the concourse where we would meet the army transit bloke with our draft. Even after 2 days, it was great to catch up with the blokes again. Joe Rice, Al Ingram, Kenny Bowen, Johnny Davies, G.D. Smith and Rod Wallace were all there and champing at the bit to get stuck into what was coming next. It was a 4 day trip to get to Perth, changing trains in Melbourne, Adelaide, Port Augusta, and finally Kalgoorlie in the goldfields of WA. Exhausting, but also fun. Needless to say, we put a few away on the train, and every day we came through, and in every city we came through. Let's hope we were given some drying out time once we reached Campbell Barracks. It was amazing how easy it was to pull chicks on this journey. There were always a few rippers on the train who gave us the eye, an invitation taken up readily by some of the blokes. Me, nah, too shy. You don't believe that, do you? Arriving in Kalgoorlie, we quickly cleared the train to join the Rattler, where the old pre-World War II vintage carriages shook, rattled and rolled and gave you the best night's sleep. A few of the blokes were keen to get down to Hay Street to check out the girls, but we only had a couple of hours in Cal, so the rest of us found a pub close by and um, propped there. Once the train got underway, we all opened the bottles of Bacardi and Bundaberg. It wasn't long before I was off to the rack. Next morning, we were getting close to Perth. End of chapter.
And that was chapter 9 from Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Services by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. So lots of fun. So it's not all it's not all work in the army, as it's very clear. There's a lot of drink, a lot of mateship.
Oh yeah, yeah. The mateship thing was vital. It was the most important thing of all.
Hmm.
You knew that the Americans call it your six.
Hmm.
Yeah, someone watch your back. And every time in the bush, as it proved later on, um, you knew the bloke behind you and the bloke behind him were covering all the arcs, so you didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and a lot of these blokes you're out on the drink with, you'd wind up in the bush with. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So
And
yeah. So go on. Yeah, go on.
that was the end of the para course where we enjoyed ourselves in Sydney. I was glad to get out of there though.
Yeah, yeah. The stories about King's Cross. I remember when we moved to Sydney in the '80s. King's Cross still had that reputation of being a pretty seedy spot, but I think it's tidied up a bit now. I think it's
Oh, it's still a bit rough. A bit rough. Georgia bought a house up there, bought a unit.
yeah,
I stayed with her one weekend, and we wandered down the street, and there were Japanese restaurants and all sorts of things. So yeah, it was tidied up a bit.
yeah. Well, it's valuable real
Well,
estate.
hey?
Valuable real estate.
Oh, imagine
Yeah, yeah.
you and
So
the dollars.
yeah. So yeah, I never really
Um,
spent much time. We were living in Sydney when I was a kid, so and I never really spent any time in Sydney as an adult. So never really know much about the area aside from what you tell us. But it's
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
but
it's a brilliant place, Sydney. It's just so huge.
yeah.
The coastline is just fantastic.
Hmm.
The Bondi Beach and all the northern beaches.
Yeah, but then you were on your way to Perth, and so walking, going away from that, and so did that stress you out at all about the idea of leaving New
No, not
South
at all.
Wales?
Just saw it as another part of an adventure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The, the blokes not from New South Wales couldn't stop shaking us about how rough a bloody town Sydney was and all that sort of stuff. And I thought maybe we'll get out of here and reacquaint ourselves or acquaint ourselves with a nice calm town like Perth.
yeah. Well, you're all about broadening your horizons. You talk in this episode about watching footy for the first time.
Yeah.
Can't imagine having never seen it before. Because I think you talk in the other book about how you had a teacher at St Stanislaus who used to wear a Richmond Aussie rules jumper, and
Yeah,
you'd never
he
seen
did.
anything like it. Um,
Bill, anyway, he wore this bloody black thing with his big sash. We all thought it was a bit. How's your father? What's that? What's that for? Oh, that's Richmond. Do you
yeah,
play for? Oh, it's a team in Melbourne. So Bill, I can't think of his surname. Bill. Anyway,
that's all right.
good big hard bloke.
Yeah,
But we didn't. They never ever played Aussie rules. Stanislaus, of course, it was all rugby. Rugby,
yeah,
7 grades of rugby,
yeah, yeah.
and I'll
Bill,
talk about that in Hail Mary.
that was Father Bill Lee.
Bill Lee, that's it.
There you go.
Father Bill Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Um,
do you how do you remember that?
because I have the manuscript for the other book up on my computer and I can just search for it. This is what happens when you have a son as a librarian. I can
Yeah.
find things. So So yeah, so you went to watch the Aussie Rules for the first time, and when I grew up, you were always pretty dismissive of football, but you watch it a fair bit now.
Yeah, I do. I only watch the Dockers and like to
Yeah,
watch Geelong because of a couple of their star players. I don't like Collingwood one bit, of course, because they're
yeah. No, we're tragic Dockers fans in our house. So
yeah,
for better or for worse, I think there's a lot of integrity that comes from barracking for a team that's always been on the skids. I think you grew up supporting St George with your father, and
I
St
did.
George never lost a game ever when you were growing up.
That was back in the unlimited tackle rule.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't hold on to the ball, you'd never lost the ball. So
Hmm.
now it's five tackles and you hand it over.
Yeah. Yeah. Different game.
Dad was so thrilled. Him and his brother Jim, mad St George fans. It was
Hmm.
always good to go to the football with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
was
yeah.
at a
Sorry, go on.
I was at a grand final with them once. There were 78,000 people in the cricket ground, which was 18,000 over the limit. And mum, Helen, me, Dad, and Jim were all at the football, and I was standing on two large Carlton cans, those big cans in those days,
Yeah.
standing on two of them to see over the top. But mum and Helen went to the toilet about 10 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and we never saw them again till back at the car about 5 o'clock. It was
Wasn't
just
that the
ridiculous.
that was the legendary that wasn't that the 1963 the Proven Summons grand final, the St George versus Wests, the muddy one was
Oh, I think so. It was
I remember
certainly
you telling it because the image of those two of um uh
Norm Praven and Arthur
Arthur
Summons.
Summons after the game became the Winfield Cup, the trophy
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
competition. This,
that's it.
yeah,
No, they were good days.
yeah. But then,
That was very
yeah.
calm and
Well, and it seems like you got on best with your dad when football was
yeah,
involved,
yeah.
football or a beer.
Yeah, or talking about his army career.
Yeah.
He wasn't that keen on my army career, but I know he was pretty rapt. When I got commissioned captain in the Commandos years later, he was very chuffed. He's standing there. There's a photograph in the book, standing there with this big grin on his face, like a big tern. I
Yeah.
think it's on page.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there when we get to that chapter. But yeah, lots of good stuff in that chapter, and just that real sense of finding finding leisure time in amongst the serious stuff. And I think, the next chapter we're going to get to, you're going to get out to Perth, and the serious stuff really cracks on when
Yeah.
you get there, because all of a sudden, a lot of you are getting ready to go immediately to war. So big change. But we
That
will
was a
get,
good thing about military discipline. You forced yourself to abide by the rules, knowing full well that you could get locked up or thrown out or whatever.
hmm
And some blokes didn't care. My mate Stanley Bilborough, he didn't care a bit, but he survived and went to Vietnam with us and did pretty well over there.
yeah,
But he didn't care. I thought, how the hell are you going to get through the day, mate? With the way you
yeah.
can.
Well, we'll find out more about that.
I'd been to boarding school, so I knew the rules.
Yeah, that's right. So the upcoming episodes, we're going to see more about that discipline. So we'll get to that then. So that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. Join us next week for the next installment of our exploration of Mick Malone's career as we get to the 10th chapter of the book itself, entitled The Regiment. If you have a copy of Two Ranks, read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for carousingly joining me on this journey. This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.